Guys, we're live. This is episode 64 with Jason Beighley. Jason is a retired sergeant major, served in Ranger Battalion and an Army Special Mission Unit. And by the way, I'm Jack Murphy, here with co-host Dave Park. This is the Team House, same show as always. I do apologize if Jason's audio sounds a little spotty tonight. That's totally our fault. We're having some weird issue with that Dave and I will figure out a little bit later on, but we improvised and we're rolling right into it. So here we are, and welcome to the show, Jason. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. I really appreciate you guys having me. It means a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess, Dave, do you want to start off asking Jason about his origin story? That's kind of the tradition on the show.
Yes. Being that Jack and I are both comic book geeks, and every good hero has an origin story, and you are certainly one of our nation's heroes. So we would love to hear your origin story. Like, who were you growing up? What was your childhood like, and what led you to become a soldier in the first place?
Interesting question. I don't talk about this very much just because it's ancient history. Born in Minnesota, originally moved to Oregon when I was a young boy. Grew up in Oregon, in Salem, and small family, three kids. I grew up with the oldest one, and eventually, about the time I got into the 9th grade in high school, I realized that I had just enough physical prowess to make the football team and the basketball team and the baseball team, and then sit on the bench for the whole season for all three of them. And so probably about late freshman year or so, I started working. And once I started working, I ended up with 3 jobs by the time I was a senior. And then graduated high school, and the 2 jobs that I had, one was in the daytime working at a Christmas tree farm. They grow a lot of Christmas trees up in Oregon, and they laid me off because we harvested all the trees, for the year by Thanksgiving, and then the supermarket job that I had in the evenings, they fired me right after Christmas, I think, maybe. It would have been late January because I was in the Army 3 weeks later. So that was 1984. I walked into the recruiter's office and basically said, "Hey, I'm interested in going in the Army. I want to fly helicopters." There's a whole another long story behind that, which is kind of 19-year-old young man's silliness, I realize now. But it got me where I was going, and my only stipulation when I talked to the recruiter, I said I want to be gone as soon as possible because I don't want to have enough time to change my mind and then try to get out of it. So flash to bang, I was gone in 3 weeks. Infantry basic and advanced training and all that down at Fort Benning. Then the only thing that made, and so I had nobody mentoring me. I didn't know anybody in the military, and nobody to give me any sensible advice. So I said, "Hey, you want to be an infantry guy?" And I said, "Sure." And then how about a contract to go to get stationed in Germany? And I thought, "Oh, that'd be pretty cool." I never really traveled, so I did that and ended up in Germany my first 2 years in a mechanized infantry unit in the 8th Infantry Division, which has since been deactivated. I actually learned a few things though that I carried with me. Kind of a lot of versions of what not to do in the Army, but I will say that I had some really good junior and mid-grade NCOs. I had a superb company commander who, through a series of events, I ended up driving the vehicle. The old track vehicle M113 personnel carrier. I drove that thing for a couple of years, and stopped. I drove for my platoon leader, and then I ended up driving for my company commander. I was pretty motivated, pretty squeaky clean young kid. Motivated to want to do the right thing, and probably within 6 or 8 months, I realized that I had come to the wrong place in the Army because I wasn't going to be challenged. And within a few months after that, I ended up driving for my company commander first the track vehicle, and then I ended up driving his Jeep around, doing different reforger exercises in Germany, the big return of forces of Germany. That's what that acronym means for people who don't know that, because I don't know that they do it anymore. But anyway, he had previously been a platoon leader in 2nd Ranger Battalion at Fort Lewis. And since I grew up in Oregon, that seemed like it made the most sense to me, because it was only about 4 hours away from where my family was when I was, at this point probably 20. And so I made that my goal, and got to and left Germany and ended up somehow with a airborne school slot. So I left Germany in December of 1986. I was 2.5 years there. Went to airborne school because I put in the right paperwork and it got approved. And then they sent me from airborne school straight to Fort Knox, which is this is way back when Fort Knox was the center for armor, not like it is now. And they didn't have a parachute on the entire base of Fort Knox. And the guy looked at my orders when I showed up, and he's like, "What are you doing here? You just came from airborne school." And it's like, that's where they sent me. The paperwork was supposed to. So let me go back. When I submitted the paperwork, I was supposed to go to. My intent was to put in an airborne school and then Ranger school and do both back to back. And then I was going to be in my re-enlistment window, and I could re-enlist. So I ended up at Fort Knox instead. And I got assigned there in January of '87. By April of '87, I'm sitting in formation one morning, and my first sergeant announces that we have 4 Ranger school slots for the battalion. Who wants to go? And I was shocked to see that mine was the only hand in the whole company that went ahead. I'm not kidding you. Which kind of solidified for me the fact that I had come into the wrong place in the Army by sheer accident, just kind of like what it was. So I went to Ranger School, I don't know, July, August, September, something like that, of '87. Managed somehow by the grace of God and the skin of my teeth to pass without getting recycled or hurt. And then, so by this time I go back to my unit at Fort Knox, and within 2 months, maybe 3 months, so by October of '87, they sent me to the E6 board to get promoted, and I passed that board, and then my re-enlistment window came open, and I talked to the re-enlistment guy, and since I was airborne qualified and Ranger qualified, he said, well, you can re-enlist for any station, any duty station of choice that you want, because you're a soon to be E6 with the Victor skill identifier, right? For people who know what that means, the Army gives you an MOS, and then 11 Bravo means infantry, and then Jack, right? You need to explain this, or people pretty much tuned into it.
I mean, we have a wide variety of guests, people who probably are 11 Victors, all the way to people who are, a 16-year-old in high school who has no idea. So
so no, it's good that you're explaining this.
I just don't like to bore the people with a bunch of minutia that they already know. But anyway, so since I had this little letter designator that the Army gives you if you're a airborne Ranger qualified person, you get I think it's a V for Victor. And so I said, okay, well, I'll re-enlist and go to Fort Lewis, Washington. If you get me to Fort Lewis, I will get myself over to the Ranger Battalion. That was kind of okay, fine. That was me kind of, like knife-handing myself. You're going to do this, right? So pretty much. The good news was that I still had pretty good contact with my former company commander. So let me stop for a second, and I doubt very seriously if that guy will ever listen to this, but his name was Victor Jarrett, and I believe he retired as a lieutenant colonel, maybe as a Fulbert 06, I'm not sure. Really, really superb leader. I loved working for that guy. And, I don't know what he went on to do in his career. I kept touch with him for 3 or 4 years. This was before cell phones and texting, so it was much more difficult. And I think I am connected with him on LinkedIn or Facebook or something, I don't know. But anyway, Mr. Jarrett, if you're out there listening to this anywhere, I owe you a huge thanks. Then Captain Jarrett gave me really good mentoring, and basically he gave me the phone number to the battalion headquarters at Fort Lewis, and he said, you call this number, you're going to speak to Mrs. Brunson on the phone, and you tell her you want to make an appointment with the command sergeant major who was a little plumbing in Leon Guerrero at the time. Probably anybody who's listening to this that ever spent the time. He went on to be the regimental sergeant major, I believe, and he was a legend in the regiment at the time. And so I called and made the appointment, and I got my orders and went and spent, I got that back. I went back to Oregon and spent about a month on the ground in Oregon over Christmas. I got married to my still wife. We're coming up on 33 years.
Oh, congrats.
And I ordered to go to Fort Lewis, and that was it. You know, with a plan to get to 2nd Bat. And long story short, that all worked out. They hired me and sent me to Rope, which is not called Rope anymore. I think we changed the name of it.
Now it's RASP 2, but yeah, back in the day it was Rope.
Yeah. So, you know, like when you show up already as an NCO, they send you to school to make sure that you're not you can do road marches and tie knots and perform and, you know, all sort of stuff. So I did that and ended up at 2nd Bat. Spent 4 years there, got promoted to E6. Went to airborne school, jump master school, went to jump master school. I was there during the time when we did the Rio Hato jump into Panama. I did not get a jump. I don't have a gold jump wing. That's because I was working a staff job in the S3 air shop at the time. And the exact opposite of Victor Jarrett was my boss at the time, and would not let me jump. That's a whole other story. I don't really talk about too much. Because then I have to bring up that guy's name, and then I have to bring up the fact that I like to punch him in the face. Make me look like an ass. So we won't talk about that. And that's like an hour or two long discussion. And I probably never do that publicly. But anyway, I got a really good squad leader time there. I really enjoyed being in the Ranger Battalion. I enjoyed Fort Lewis a lot. And then I went to selection. I went to selection the first time and didn't make it, and I went back again in '92, and I got selected that time, and then I went to Fort Bragg and never left. I'm still there now.
So a couple
in the central North Carolina area. So.
A couple things. So you went to Ranger Battalion the hard way. Like, at no point in time did you ever have a contract. At no point in time did you ever have a guarantee. You just kind of like rolled the dice a couple of times and managed to get yourself there.
That's correct. Yeah, and I walked in as an E5 promotable, which is the guys who grew up there and got raised in the battalion as a private will tell you that I got over in there right. I'm sure I did, because I didn't have to go through that abuse that they did. I mean, I'll take the hit on that, but I'll also, it wasn't my fault. I had no idea.
Right. Yeah, and
it took me the first 4 years to figure out where the path was that I wanted to walk, let alone.
Right, and this is before the information age, where like everybody knows everything now, and you can go online anywhere and find the steps you need to take and what you need to talk to the recruiter about, or things like that. I mean, this was a big
right.
All this was kind of a mystery back before the internet, before widespread computers and stuff like that. So, you talk about...
Exactly.
So you talk about going to battalion as a promotable E5 with a Ranger tab. Now, for our viewers who don't know, in Ranger Battalion, because he talks about growing up there, most people go to Ranger Battalion as a private, and then gain their ranks while they're there. When you go as an NCO, they call you an import. Right, and it's
that's right,
and it's doubly hard to prove you have to prove yourself twice as much. Or did you find that you had to work twice as hard to prove yourself?
Yes. So they do call you an import, and I knew that people thought that about me, and nobody ever called me to my face. But you know the deal, and then you know the deal is what it is while you're there, even though nobody's saying it to you. And then a couple key points to what you just said. So, I show up there, and I know when I walked in, and it's like there's a you guys know the whole deal about the 6 stanzas of the Ranger Creed. There's a paragraph for each letter of the word Ranger, right? And all my former squad and platoon mates and all the people I know from when I was in second bat would probably be, I couldn't recite them for you right now if I had to. I would cross words from one paragraph to the other, and it would be all confusing and stupid. But the running joke was, right, there's a seventh stanza to the Ranger Creed, which is, once a leg, always a leg. Right? So, and, meaning when you go to basic as an infantry guy and you go straight to airborne school and then you go straight to the Ranger indoctrination program, or whatever they call it, a RASP or something like that. Jack, you said it earlier, I didn't catch it, I'm sorry.
RASP 2, yeah.
But, yeah, and so when you go through that process, you basically spend your, the youngest days in the Army already as an airborne qualified, your paratrooper. So, those guys get to look down on the rest of us who didn't do that for the first, right off the very first chance. And whatever. I had that, a couple guys maybe said that to me once or twice here or there, but I had one thing going, I had two things going for me, that helped me out. One is I was a little skinny dude. I think I walked into the Ranger Battalion at 6 foot and about 155 pounds, maybe 158 pounds, and I could run like the wind. And I have a really good work ethic, and I don't, there's a couple of guys I've ever met, well, a whole bunch of guys in my building at Fort Bragg, I'll tell you that, they can outwork me or keep up with me, but very few people outside of there can. I mean, so if you can do that and you're willing to take some abuse and just put your nose to the grindstone and just work, and then it's like, hey, yeah, whatever, you guys can call me a 7 stanza of the Ranger Creed all day long, that's fine, no big deal. And then, when enough time passes and, they see that you can learn and adapt and, you're a good jump master and you're responsible and you don't make mistakes. And eventually, about the time I got that squared away and had a decent reputation, of my own recollection, I'm sure if you call a few people from Washington back in the day, they'd be like, you didn't have a good reputation. But as I remember it, it's about the time I got all that figured out is when I left and ended up going to selection and then get reassigned to Fort Bragg, which was summer of '92.
So what was it like when you landed in the unit in 1992, Jason? Because, I mean, that's just such an interesting period of time for American counterterrorism, in the sense that I think a lot of people out there have this impression that, like, nothing was happening. But actually, you guys were pretty active, and it was, I don't know, I'll let you tell us what you want to tell us about it, but I find it a very interesting time period, that like late 1980s into the early 1990s.
Probably my view of this is a little bit better now because I can look back with a clearer, when you show up and you're a young E6 and you're trying to get through, you just passed the month-long job the hiring process, and now you've got 6 months plus of training to go through. You have to pass everything, and you have to, there's a lot of stress on you, and you don't necessarily think through some stuff that you look back on and go, I should have thought through that a little bit better. The stuff that it's the stuff that the reason that you're there is to get the experience, because you don't have the experience, and then once you get the experience, you mature a little bit, then you can look at it and go, okay, now I realize that I should have known some of those things, but I also know why I didn't know them, because I've gained the experience that showed me why I didn't know them in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that to paint the picture of, it's another version of you're running 100 miles an hour, doing what you're supposed to do, trying to keep up, trying to, not get hurt, trying to do your job, perform well, not be the weakest link, pass all your tests, blah, blah, blah. I ended up having, just as luck would have it, I ended up having a hernia surgery in the middle of the training course to put me out. Luckily, they did it like on a Wednesday before a 4-day weekend, and everybody was really, they were just very cool about it. didn't have to take another PT test for about a month, and it just worked out swimmingly. And that was just a sheer stroke of luck. But the thing about the Army in '92, right? So when I got to the Rangers in '88, I walked in there. I'll just give you a couple of data points here because it's indicative. I walked into the Ranger Battalion that day for an interview, and the CSM, Leon Guerrero, who I mentioned earlier, was out in the field. He was out in the field doing a 3-day field problem with one of the platoon in Charlie Company. Now, for those of you guys who might have been in the Army back in the late 80s and early 90s, the fact that a Command Sergeant Major was out in the field humping a rucksack with a platoon is astounding. Mm-hmm. It's probably still astounding. I don't know. Because most guys just don't do that. By the time you get to be a CSM, but just age-wise, there's only a handful of those guys that can still, bodies can hold up to jumping out of airplanes and putting on rucksacks and walking out in the woods for, when I say out in the field with a Ranger platoon for a week in 1988, I'm talking, that is a 10 or 15 mile long infill, patrols all week long, back and forth, and then if you're lucky, you get a truck ride on Friday morning on your way back to the company, but probably you were walking another 10 or 12 miles back out of there. So it was and we all enjoyed it. It was a great time. But so I show up and he's out there doing that. So I ended up having to actually do my interview with the first sergeant of Bravo Company, which is where I ended up going. First Sergeant Klein, Big Daddy Klein, who ended up being, I believe he was the RSM a number of years later. And he was the first sergeant in Beighley, so I walked in there. The personnel sergeant that was the NCOIC over in the S1 shop walked me over there. E7, that's his name. So we walked into this room, and these guys are all still wearing the pale green colored, OD green colored OG 107s. And I'm wearing the early original version of the BDUs before they got cool and they made them into ripstops. The Army had these hideous, heavy cotton versions. They had these. I'll do it over here where you can see it a little bit. They had these collars on them that looked like, they didn't look like Elvis collars, but they might as well have been. They were these huge, wide collars, and you could pin your rank on, and I mean, they were just hideous. I didn't know this at the time until I got to see, you walk in and you see all these guys wearing their OG 107s, and it's like, oh my God, I want to be like those guys. Look how cool that is. And the jumper boots. They were still wearing green jumper boots at the time. Yeah. And so then I got there and we got to wear those, I don't know, whatever, for a few months or a year. And then they phased those out and even the Rangers weren't wearing them anymore. I went from wide lapel, straight leg, stupid BDUs to OG 107s to new ripstop BDUs. Also with the K-Pot early on. Or a K-Pod for airborne operations and live fires and stuff like that. The first version of the Kevlar helmet, when I say K-Pod, which was the first version that had like the World War II German cut where it came and had the little interior flash down here like this episode. That was almost blasphemous, and it was like, we look like a bunch of Germans in World War II. How could we dare do this? It was just huge discussions, all across the Army. And 5 years later, when I went through the time in the Rangers, I got to learn a lot about stuff that I just didn't know when you're in mechanized infantry. And then by summer of '92 and the last half of '92, I'm going through the training course at Fort Bragg, which was like being on another planet. Mm-hmm. In some ways. They had a lot of the same. We had Car 15s and MP5s and all this other cool stuff, but a lot of it wasn't super technologically advanced at that point, just because a lot of things, just the lack of technology and the lack of a robust, perhaps testing and acquisition. I don't even know. The process was lacking, and everything like that. But the part that looked like it was in another world to me was the difference in. It has to all be boiled down into the difference in leadership, and organizationally, the leadership in the culture. And what I mean by that is, so I showed up there. I'll give you a couple of examples. And stop me if this is like, I just go down a rabbit hole and I digress too far. So we show up and it's like, okay, go get all your equipment. They gave me, I don't know, I think my initial issue when I first got there was 4 or 5 large, that like not the Army duffel bag, but the 8-meter kit bag, like you use it, they give you in airborne school. Those things hold like a ton of crap. I think I got 4 or 5 of those of equipment issued to me the day I showed up there. That was more equipment than I had ever had issued to me in every single unit I've been to, combined together times 4. This is like, you get your normal TA-50, it's like a couple of jackets and some rubber boots and, some other just retarded crap. And then all of a sudden you show up to this place and there was stuff in that bag I didn't even know what it was, Or I recognize it's like, I think this thing goes on these go on my feet and this one goes on my head, and these go on my hands, but I've never used this stuff before. I don't know what it is. And that was the first clue. The second clue was when I went through and passed got through the hiring process, as on the way through that, they kind of usher you out pretty quickly. You go through this sort of flurry of activity where I hardly remembered it until I showed up to Fort Bragg a few weeks later. And I show up and I pull all this stuff out of these bags that they issued me, and it's all the correct size for me. They had all this stuff was the right size. And there were no mistakes. And I remembered that they had me try on all these different clothing. It's like, here, put these boots on, put this thing on, put this jacket, down the line. And I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. And somebody else is asking me questions while I'm doing this. And I'm trying to write on a piece of paper and I'm signing on all this stuff. And only when I got there and went through all these bags that I remember, it's like, oh, they had me try on all that stuff, because their logistic people, their supply circuit is so squared away. He went through and found all my sizes and put all my shit in the bag so it was all the same, and it was all sizing. It was all right. It was correct. I think I had to DX maybe one DX. I had to exchange, for those of you who don't understand that term, a direct exchange is abbreviated, and it's just DX. You have a piece of equipment to wear out, you get a new one, you go and DX it, right? That's the issue facility. And I think I had 2 pieces of all of the equipment they gave me. I had to go over and get, like, one had maybe a compass with a smudge on it or something, and the other one like a wrong pair of socks. I mean, just this mundane, ridiculous stuff. It's just like that. The level of execution, attention to detail, the first hour in the building was astounding. You have to, like, sit down at the end of the day and have a drink and go, did this just really happen?
Yeah.
Is this the American Army?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Is this still the Army? Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. And so then, over the next couple of weeks, it's, so then we get guns issued and do this, and we go and get our team rooms, and we meet guys who are on our team for the training course and all this other stuff. And one of the things I remember is, they issued us pistols, and we had rifles and all this other stuff, and we started out. So I was in E6 with about 8.5 years in the Army, I think, when I showed up. The staff sergeant. No, yeah. I was just, a young staff sergeant, and not super experienced. I didn't even have 100 jumps. Static line parachute jumps. I might have like 45 or something like that. Not super experienced compared to a lot of people at my same age and grade, but all of my peers were, young E6s at like 26 years old, like 27 years old, like I was, up to, E7s at about 31, 32 years, right?
And I should mention, of course, that an E6, a staff sergeant in the unit, is basically like a private, right?
Absolutely. Right. Well, all of us were, the E7s as well. So to that point, we spend, the first, I don't know, probably 2 weeks, laying on the ground, shooting shot groups through our rifles at 100 and 200 and 300 yards. It was the basicest of basic rifle marksmanship for weeks. That's all we did. It There wasn't all this cool guy ninja. I'm gonna free fall and fill out of the space shuttle,
Rappelling through skylights. Yeah.
Right. It was like, hey, here's what you're gonna do. You know, and I mean, I'm talking, you know, record fire. There's an instructor, a cadre there, writing down scores every, like 2-3 times a day. Everything gets recorded. Shot through here. This. Here's how bad you suck. Here's how bad you know everybody else is doing better than you, and all this sort of stuff. Right? It sounds like that. They don't talk down to you. It's very professional. And that was the other thing that was so striking about it is, you know, it's like nobody yells at you, nobody makes you do push-ups, nobody screams at you and tries to smoke you and, you know, elevate your feet and do push-ups and all this just stupid crap, right? So it was just really gentlemanly and professional and challenging and trying all at the same time, breathtakingly so. You know, and then they give you a pistol, but you don't get any ammo. You dry fire for weeks before you can even go to the range and stand on the range and shoot your pistol. So they do stuff like this, and it's all basic. And you know, I remember at one point these two really senior guys that were instructors. We were down doing basic rifle stuff, like on the first or second day, right? Like, hey, you guys go get some lunch and we'll see you in an hour. So we're over there trying to do the whole, you know, the stupid dumb army shit where you take you stack your arms and your rifles in like a teepee.
Yeah.
You remember doing this?
Mm-hmm.
People listening to it probably, you know, that the army has this thing called stacking arms because, you know, you're not allowed to let your gun, your rifle, your weapon ever touch the ground. And if you can see my face close enough, I'm somewhat scoffing when I say rifle and weapon and all this because I don't even use those terminology anymore. I should say, it's a long gun or a short gun or a pistol or rifle or whatever. But, you know, you have to learn those terms and they get drilled into you and blah, 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 blah. So all of us are sitting here trying to do the typical Army thing of, you know, we all have to leave and there's nobody there to hold our weapons for us off the ground. So we're trying to do this stacking thing and all this other crap. And nobody knows how to do it because we're a bunch of SF guys and Rangers and nobody, you know. And so one of these instructors looks at us and he goes, what are you doing? And, you know, all of us are like, we do the whole, you know, what do you mean? the surprise look like, oh my, right? And he's like, what are you doing? He's like, well, we don't want to leave the, you know, weapons on. He goes, look, lock the bolts to the rear and point them down range and lay them on the ground because that's where they're going to end up anyway.
Right.
But we can do that? And he's like, yeah, I just told you to. Stop being stupid. Put it on the ground and go eat. It's like, okay. That nobody ever talked to me like that before. You know, it was just like, if it doesn't make sense, it's not going to get done. And so, and there's probably, if I sat long enough, we'll probably have 1,000 stories like that, right? Maybe
Yeah.
else I know.
I mean, Jason,
stuff like that.
I've been told.
Fascinating.
I've been told also that like it's perfectly normal for guys to walk around the compound with their weapon locked and cocked, or whatever term you want to use, you know, with one in the pipe, and you know, just walking around, and that's just how it is. And I don't know if you want to comment on that, but I mean, it's just I think even by the time I went through like special forces training, like they kind of like had us do that also. It's like, hey, that's how it is overseas. Mm-hmm. Like you're not gonna like put your gun in the arms room or anything. Mm-hmm. So
right. No, that's accurate enough. I mean, not like, you don't do that in the mess hall. You don't walk around the building like that.
Yeah.
Like, it's the range and then it's everywhere else. But that's not inaccurate at all. It just kind of is what it is.
Oh, I mean, a lot of it was going from, the regular Army, and Ranger Battalion has changed a lot over time. Like, it's far more professionalized now than it was when I was in. Like, they're really good at some stuff. I don't want to say they weren't, like, awesome. But, now they have opportunities within Ranger Battalion that they didn't have when I was there. Yeah. And they treat them more like adults, I would say, than they did when I was in. And so when I say larger Army, even though you were at Ranger Battalion, that sort of included that at the time, where you're going from this system that almost, infantilizes. I don't know if that's the right pronunciation, but treats people like you're a risk or this is a risk or we need to hold your hand through everything. To an organization that's like, hey, you're an adult. We're hiring you to be an adult. We're hiring you to make decisions. So we're going to treat you like an adult.
That's right. That's right. And it's it's kind of a, you learn pretty quick that you got to go figure this out, right?
Yeah.
And I think I had a couple of glitches with that early on because it took me a little bit to come out, and I was never like a big regimented guy, or at least I didn't see myself that way. Maybe I was, but I just I always kind of thought of myself as a more of a free thinker and solve problems and help people out. By example, right? So after about the first year or so, year and a half. And I don't even remember. At some point when I was in the squad leader in the Ranger Battalion, I knew that all that smack that they were talking about, which I mentioned before, full 7 stands of the Ranger Creed and once a leg, always a leg, and all that crap. I knew that when the guys that were privates in the other squads in my platoon, their team leaders were bringing their guys to me to ask questions and get advice before they were going to their own squad leaders, then I knew I was good.
Right.
And so I always kind of looked at myself as ability to, I'm not saying I'm smarter than anybody. It was just like I thought I understood things pretty well and I could work things out pretty well. And when I was going through the training course when I got to Bragg, I had a couple issues where I was kind of looking around a little bit confused because I thought I was going to get prompted with a little bit more information because it's still an Army class, right? And at one point I had an instructor. At one point he walked up to me. He goes, again, it was one of these. What are you doing? It's because I was somewhere accomplishing a task and I had a timeline and I had to report some stuff back and I had to get some things. Lined up, ready to go, right? Mm-hmm. And so he comes up and he's like, okay, what's going on? And I go, I'm supposed to go, do this thing. I got to go find this place, and he goes, you need to get moving. And he said something like, what do you think that means? And I go, I'm like standing there outside of this place, and I'm just kind of looking around. And finally, it dawned on me. He was just looking at me like I was stupid because I was being stupid. And he's like, what do you think you should do? And I go, and he kind of looked and kind of was like one of these things.
Yeah.
Right? And I looked like, oh, maybe I should walk over there. And I walked over there, and then I walked some more, and I did some other stuff, and I kind of figured it out, and I came back. I was like, okay, I get it. Once I had that little bit of an epiphany, which I think in the minds of a lot of the instructors, though that one and whatever the other one might have been, I would never want to circle back with these guys, but that was kind of a, hey, you need to watch out for this guy because I don't know that he's quite got what we need him to have to get through this thing, right?
Right.
And so whatever.
It's almost that they had to break some of the Army.
I'm off course, and I don't remember what you asked.
No, it's fine. But it's almost that they had to. It seems like they almost had to break some of the habits that the Army, the regular Army, had instilled, right? The whole sua sponte and take the initiative and do your thing, make your judgment. But that was really on you at this point. Where prior to that, there was always somebody else that you were looking to give the execution.
It's interesting that you say that because specifically because you used the two words sua sponte. And you prompted a thought for me that I have never had before, which is this: the Ranger Regiment kind of owns that term. They don't own it legally, but it's kind of culturally it belongs to them, right?
Right.
And really, the only place the only place that the two words sua sponte, which for your listeners who may not know, is supposedly is roughly translated from Latin, and it means of their own accord or of one's own accord, which by the way, I did some research on the Latin stuff a couple years back, and I don't think it means that. it's like the Montoya in the what was that?
Princess Bride.
I don't think that word.
Yeah.
Means what you think that word.
These are fighting words. These are fighting words. That's like it's also.
No.
If you look at Ranger history, like also Robert Rogers is not exactly the patron saint of Rangers that some would make him out to be, but also I digress. I mean, I'm not trying to start a civil war here or anything.
No. But so I've done a lot of Robert Rogers. I'm going to come back to the point here. I'm sorry. Robert Rogers of Robert's standing orders, which were for the Rangers back in pre-revolutionary New England, about 1740, 1750 time frame. And he had these guys that would go out and range through the woods and find the Indians and engage with, and they were clearing out the Indians. That's what they did. This is, I'm going to trigger a bunch of people by saying that because we don't talk like this anymore, but in the United States in 2020. But that's what these guys did. So they used to go out and do ranging through the woods. They were all backwoodsmen, frontiersmen. Daniel Boone, before Daniel Boone even existed, type of thing, or during about the time frame when he did, and they called them rangers. Well, what Robert Rogers did, smarter than anybody else, was he wrote all that stuff down and put it on paper, and he made everybody's rules Rogers rules, and then he put his name on it, and it's like everybody knows it. Once you put your name on it, you can write a claim. You get things. I mean, education, you get whatever.
There's actually also some dispute.
I don't.
There's a dispute about whether or not Robert Rogers ever wrote that stuff or ever used it, even because the question is like some of the language, the verbiage he uses in it. Like don't forget nothing. Like someone who's educated is not going to write like that. So there's some questions about the authenticity of it also.
Well, and when I was researching this, I'm a word research and care cool, but I don't have any more time to spend on it, right? But the reading that I did, it's everybody puts a disclaimer up and says, hey, there's no way to go back and fact check this 100% and make sure that it's absolutely correct because we just don't know. But I think that the slang terminology, poor English, I think probably passed from the, Roberts would have been probably a fairly well-to-do person to be able to put together a fighting force in the 1750s. They would have been what they called a gentleman, I'm pretty sure. And the Rangers' lineage went all the way up through, the Revolution, the French Indian Wars, all the way through the Civil War, all the way up to the present day. That lineage never stopped, and I think at some point, some Kentuckian, not perhaps the best speller or writer, oh, by the way, go read the original non-edited version of Lewis and Clark's. Those guys were educated, and they could, Clark could barely write in. Hold on a second, I think. Can you hear me right now?
Yeah,
Can you lose me?
Mm-hmm. We just lost you on video, but we can hear you.
I think I've got to...
we got you.
We hear you.
I think I got to go back and change my...
Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can.
We hear you.
We got you.
No, It's all good.
Apparently my headphones just went dead on me. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
That's okay. We can hear you fine.
Okay, you got me okay?
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm on a tangent on top of a tangent on top of a
No, I wonder. Bring you.
The thing about Rogers.
Go ahead.
What were you going to say? I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead. Finish your thought about Robert Rogers, then we'll roll into something else.
Well, then we need to go back to sua sponte, and then we'll roll. Please continue.
Go back to what? Say that again.
After Rogers, back to sua sponte.
Right. So I think that, like a lot of things, like I was just saying, right?
once you're the person who takes it and writes it down, whether you copyright it or not or whatever, then it sort of becomes, codified in law, if you will. Not really law, but it's codified and it's written down. So some country fellow in the 1830s or 50s or 70s got a hold of Robert's Rangers and copied him down for himself, and all the previous copies got lost, and now it's in this what we call street vernacular, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And you get something that Rogers probably would not have written down. Don't forget nothing. He probably wrote it in somewhat, maybe more polite language. Who knows?
Yeah.
But it's been transferred. So by the same token, the sua sponte thing. If you and I'm sure somebody will contact you to get a contact with me to prove me how wrong I am. And I don't claim to be an expert on this, but I did a lot of poking around with a bunch of different Latin stuff a few years ago, because I don't even know why. It was after I retired. I had been in the regiment for 25 years at least, and I can't find a direct translation of those two words that means of their own accord. But anyway, the other fighting words for the regiment is, really and truly, when I left in '92 to go to Fort Bragg, it didn't take me very long to figure out that there's one place in the Army where the phrase sua sponte actually applies, and it's there.
Right.
Not, sorry, 75th Ranger Regiment, my apologies, whatever. So anyway, the ability to go out and, I was talking with a couple of friends of mine here recently, and one guy was relating a story about something, and he was talking about how he mentioned the fact that he had a guy that we both know, that we worked with years ago, and he was like, I looked at this guy, and he was talking about something that happened in, probably in Iraq back in like 04, 05, some shit like that, I don't remember. But he was like, yeah, we had so much going on, and he said, I just looked at this guy and was like, hey, go take care of that. And he goes, and I looked at the guy and I was like, hey, I need you to go take care of this. And then he goes, I turned around and I went somewhere else and I did something else because I knew he was going to go take care of that and I didn't have to worry about it anymore. Right. And it wasn't the, well, how do you want me to take care of it and who do I need to talk to and where do I need to go? It's like, hey man, don't talk to me about this again. I don't want to hear about it until it's solved.
Right.
And that's kind of a, there's a few places, a couple pockets in the Army here and there where you've got, some trusted subordinate leaders and some the guys they work for, and they built a relationship like this where it's like, hey, I need you to go do this. Like, you roger that boss, I got it, and you move on, and you go make it happen because you two people or you team of maybe 5 or 6 people. I think I saw one other company that was like this, in my short 8 years in the Army before I went to Bragg, and it just happened to be where there was, a couple of really strong platoon sergeants, a strong first sergeant, not a strong company commander, and some really solid squad leaders. And once all those guys rotated out of there, that whole place fell apart. Right. That company, it didn't fall apart. It wasn't like they were, abject failures at everything they did, but it did not happen daily like it did before. Right. Anyway, I'll say over and let off my push to talk button for a second. I've been yammering.
Jason on the assault net. No, it's all good, man. Thank you. I don't know what else we want to get into or what you'd be willing to get into, Jason. Would you be comfortable talking about, some of the jobs you got after that and some of the places you went around the world in your military career?
It would probably depend on the detail of the question, but I can tell you.
I'll let you decide.
Well, I don't look at it as anything extraordinary, especially after what we've been doing in the last, since 2001, right? Longest duration of combat operations in our history. A lot of the stuff I got to do was kind of neat, but it pales in comparison to, what everyday Joes are doing or were doing. Some of them probably still are, but everybody was doing it, 10, 12, 15 years ago and doing it very well. And I don't know that, I don't know how beneficial that is. I don't know how cool that is to, I'll put it another way. Since I retired in 2009, it's almost 12 years, 11 and a half years I retired. And, it's I have a harder time to try and convey this to people about, because it's like, oh man, you guys did this and you guys did that and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, look, man, it's not really like that, And I have a really good friend that I made after I got out of the Army. He's younger than me considerably. I didn't meet him until after I was already out. So I'm a retired sergeant major, and I think he got out as like a Spec 4. I met him in his young 30s, early 30s. Super squared away guy, right? And what I mean by that is he's a top-notch, superb human being. In addition to the fact that he was a good soldier. And those are not always exactly the same thing. And that took me a long time to figure out as well. And so, he and I were talking about something a while back. We talked pretty regularly. He's a really good friend of mine. And he made a comment about something. I was like, look, man, I understand that you have respect for what guys like me did in our time in the service, but I said, what I never did was the shit that you did on a daily basis, you and tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of other guys in the Army at the time, in the Marine Corps, who, walked back and forth or drove back and forth in a Humvee, literally trolling for IEDs, right?
Yeah.
I never had to do that.
Right.
I never had to do that.
Right.
And none of my buddies did either. And it's I sit there and look at this and I'm like, okay, I'll dislocate my shoulder and pat myself on the back, I guess, but at the end of the day, everybody has their own scale of what's relative and what's relevant to them, and
Yeah, Jason, this is, we want to hear about your experiences and what you did, and so do the people who watch this show. And I hope you wouldn't feel have any trepidation about it on that count, at least. We have people on here who are like Mac V. SOG in Vietnam, guys who are Marine Scout snipers in Vietnam. And, we're going to have a friend of mine who's a pararescue guy, Brian. He's coming on next week. And I was talking to him on the phone yesterday. And he's like, man, I'm a little nervous about coming on your show because, you have all these, super serious guys, hardcore guys on. It's like, no, man, we're having you on because I know you're a good guy. We want to talk to you. We want to hear your experiences. And I know a guy who's a unit member who, if you hear his stories, it sounds like something out of a video game to me. It's like, what? How did that happen? But he reads books about guys who served in the Vietnam War in the infantry, and it's like, man, could I do that? I don't know.
And at the same time, we have, these guys from Vietnam who are Mac V. SOG, whatever, tell us,
how much they admire the younger guys.
Yeah, how they're like, oh, your war was so much harder, and it's like, that's not how anybody in our war sees it at all. And then we look at, World War II. I think that we all, it's funny because you talked about the jump into Rio Hato, right? And how you didn't get your mustard stain. And for people who don't quite get it, because you haven't, I think that people in SOF are constantly looking at themselves and comparing ourselves to other people, whether it's in our unit or other units or something like that.
You size everybody up.
Well,
could I beat that guy up in a fight?
Yeah, but it's like, everything, whether you could be in so many contacts, so many firefights, whatever, but if you don't have the mustard stain and other people have the mustard stain,
right.
The combat jump, then it's like, well, shit, I don't have that. I think that when people watch this, it's not a comparative thing, or when they listen, it's not a comparative thing. It's like, we're interested in your story. You were part of history. And we want to know that history, and our viewers and listeners want to know that history. So,
And in aggregate, if you think about what Dave and I are trying to accomplish here, it's not about any one show or any one interview. It's an aggregate. It adds up to all of these people and all of their experiences from the early 1960s to today.
right. And I mean, if we look at like Pat O'Donnell and the historian, and he's recording people all the way back from the OSS and all the way back to the special operations in the Revolutionary War. So, you were in, sort of in the special mission unit at a very specific time in history, and we would love to know, like what that was for you, what you experienced, what you learned, everything. And I know that we don't have time for everything, but like it's your history is as fascinating to us and to our viewers and listeners as anybody else's.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I do. I just don't look at, I don't look at what I did as all that significant as a lot of other guys did. The big question that always comes up for me is the Mogadishu '93. I was a pretty young guy in the squadron, very young, less than a year, and I actually didn't even get in country until after the first. I missed everything else that happened there except for the one event on the 3rd of October that they made the movie about. Right? I didn't do any of that stuff. I was in an Army school. Jeff, we might have talked about this the last time we chatted. I don't remember, but I was away at a school going to become an E7 down at Fort Benning, and when I came back, they were gone. My guys were, the guys that I belonged to were deployed, and it took several weeks for me to not do it on my own accord, but there were rules in place through powers that be that we could only have so many people in the country, and so it took 2 weeks for me to get there, and I think I got there maybe a week or 10 days prior to that happening, and I was in country I think less than a month. I'm certain it was less than a month. I don't remember exactly, but so that was I don't know. I have little isolated instances, couple little vignettes for that, but they're not. My stories don't look anything like the movie that Black Hawk did on the big screen. It's not close to that at all. There's some overlap, I guess, but it's not. Not anywhere near the same.
Do you feel the movie was grossly inaccurate in some ways, or?
I think there's some accuracy to it. I was walking through my building one day. So we have a guy in the building that's the historian for that organization. It's his only job, right? And I was periodically we get, as anyone could well imagine, we get delegations of visitors come in our building because of who we are. We're fairly high profile, and so we get all manner of different people coming in there. And the guy who was the historian at the time was a pretty good friend of mine. I was walking down the hallway, and he had a group of people that he was giving a tour to, like a little canned spiel about, oh, hey, this what happened in this operation here, and this happened over here, and this happened over there. And it was maybe 5 years or so after Mogadishu happened, and I walked past him right at the point, I think it was like I was going to the mess hall or something. I walked past him at the point where someone had just asked him, what about the movie and all this other stuff, and he was like, the similarities between and this was the guy who just read all the accounts that everybody wrote down and sort of collated this together into the history that those guys own, not the movie and not the Philadelphia Inquirer and all that other crap. And his comment was kind of tongue-in-cheek, and he looked at this lady and he's like, there were similarities between what happened and what was on the movie screen in that there were people in Army uniforms and helicopters, and that's about it. as far as the sequence and everything else like that. So, and of course, Hollywood is completely overblown, and we all know that. But the day that happened, we sometime after 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we pulled pitch off the airfield and inserted on that mission. Well, about 11 o'clock that morning, one of my buddies came over to me and he goes, "Hey, we're going over to we had a range on the other side of the runway where it's like it overlooked. You set your targets up in the surface danger zone for your bullets with the ocean, right?" Mm-hmm. And so he goes, "Hey, we're going to go over there and do a little PT, bring your rifle." I go, "Okay, there's no problem." So we go over there. There's 4 of us, I think, and we set up a little thing where we ran like a half a mile loop, and then came back and did some shooting and ran another half a mile. And it's like an hour's worth of PT and a couple hundred bullets fired. And it's timed and scored, and just whatever. I was a young guy, and I just kind of like, there was the guy who was doing it was not my leader. It was just one of my buddies who was senior to me. It was kind of like, "Hey, don't be a schlub. Get your ass out here. Let's go do this." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, I'm fine. I'm good with that." So I commenced to doing this running, and of course the guys that I'm doing it with, we're all trying to keep up with or beat each other in this foot race. And one guy was a straight up physical machine. And if I go back in 45 minutes, 50 minutes in our conversation here and talk about how I managed to overcome my past when I arrived at the Ranger Regiment because I could run pretty well. Well, now I'm in a pool of guys where I'm struggling to be in the top half, let alone being accomplished. So anyway, I end up back and no, we didn't finish that. I'm sorry. We were in the middle of that, so I'm all hot and sweaty. It's literally Africa hot, and smoked the crap off myself. And somebody, one of the other guys, drove over in a vehicle. And he's like, "Hey, you guys need to get back right now." And roger that. So we pack up all of our stuff and jump in the truck, drive back around the airfield, get in. Everybody's starting to get all jocked up and everything else. And I'm going to guess that was probably 12 or 12:15. I don't even remember. And so it ended up being a false alarm, and we didn't launch. And so went over, got some like I think I took a shower real quick, got some lunch, and came back, doing a couple things, whatever. And probably an hour later, walked in. It's like, "Hey, that thing that wasn't just became a thing again. So we need to get ready to go." So okay, start getting stuff prepped, and went from starting to get prepped to getting prepped to finishing prep to walking out on the flight line to rotors are suspended to my team sergeant comes out and he's got a thing. Sketching his hand, he's like, "Here's what we're doing, here's where we're going." It's like, "Okay, you get prepping that." And so we launched. And so 3:10, 3:15 in the end. I guess if you read the book and you go back through the logs, it's probably all a matter of record at this point. But as I recall, it's like 3:30, 3:20, 3:30, we're on the ground. And we obviously go to the wrong place and enter this building. And, at this point, it was just like, we're trying to find the right people that we're supposed to evac out of there. And we ended up in the wrong room, and the first striking thing I remember in that place specifically is we busted into this room. And of course, they hear the helicopter, so they know we're coming into their building. The locals know this. We're going to get to them eventually. And we're working our way down the street. So we go into this one room, and there's a group of women and a couple of young kids backed into a corner. They're all looking at us. They're all in a corner, and in front of them is a older, like too old to be in the military, aged male, maybe in his 50s, and he's holding a baby in his hands in front of his body like this. I can't do it with both hands because I have one hand on my phone, but he's holding an 18-month-old, maybe a 2-year-old, up in front of his body. You know, when we burst into the room, you know, nobody shot anybody. A round wasn't fired because there weren't any bad guys in the room. But it's just kind of like, you know, I played that. I didn't realize what I was looking at the time. I just did my job, and we did what we did. We found a couple of rifles, and we moved them out of that room, and, you know, ended up with a couple of guys who I don't even know whether they were the people who were there before. Again, I'm a brand new guy, right? I'm just doing my job and get taken a knee and face down. And but I reflected on that, you know, weeks and months later, and I still think about it every once in a while. I was like, you know, in the balance of where we are in American culture today, right? You would have to go back, I don't even know how long, to find people who, nobody in this country today would do that.
Right.
No American I know would take an extended family member, baby, you know, a granddaughter, a niece, a nephew, I don't know if the kid was male or female, I don't care. Nobody would do that.
Right.
I don't know personally, you guys don't know personally anybody who would do that.
Right.
Nobody. You know, and so that was you know, we talked about how, some people want to talk about how terrible our culture is and how terrible our country is nowadays. It seems to be a pretty common theme. It's pretty easy for people to say those things when they're, you know, to steal a quote from one of my close friends, when their bag of grain is so heavy they can't even move it, yet they complain, you know, and because they don't have the right viewpoint, they've never seen anything.
Right.
They don't know what they're talking about. They're literally uneducated and they're ignorant.
Right.
And so anyway, you know, you guys know the whole story of that whole thing. You know, we ended up at the crash site that was not Mike Duran, but the other one, and you know, that was a long night, and we kept getting radio calls, and I remember being, you know, kind of like, okay, we'll be out here pretty quick, and, you know, it got dark, and we had some casualties out of the street when we first got to the front where we stopped, and we got those guys out of the street. You know, I'm just a nug, pulling security at this point, and I remember the sun started to go down in the direction I was facing, and I had to check. I don't, like I said before, I don't remember who I tell this to, but I had to take my eyeglasses, my eye protection off. You know, the cardinal sin, you're not wearing eye pro in the army. I couldn't see anything. I had the sun literally right in my eyes, and my lenses were fogging up because it was Africa hot, and so, you know, we did that. We got inside. It got dark. I remember this radio calls coming over, and it was like, "Hey, you know, how much longer are we going to be?" And the team sergeant that was over there working on what we were waiting on doing, he had to get done what he had to do before we could leave. And he's like, "It's going to be a little while," and then called back. And this went on maybe under 30 or 40 minutes for several hours. And finally, at about 11 o'clock, I want to say, 2300. This exchange came over the radio again, and his tone of voice changed a little bit, and he was a little bit more stern. He goes, "We're going to be a while." And he unkeyed the mic. I heard the squelch break, and I was like, "Okay." And I knew right then we were not leaving until at least sunup, at a minimum,
Right.
at least. And you know, I didn't have to have my team sergeant come and tell me that. I didn't have to, you know, I knew. It's like, okay, that's it. We're here. We're not going anywhere. We're hunkered down. We're done. You know, it was you know, so in the meantime, my a couple of times, you know, a couple of times during the night, my team sergeant walks over, and I was not actually working with my own team that night. I got farmed out to the team next door to mine because I showed up late in country. My team already had maxed out the helo that they were flying on. They couldn't fit any more bodies on it, and so the one that I was on had extra space, so they put me with this other team. And so the guy who wasn't technically my team sergeant, but he was for that duration of that entire operation. The whole time I was in country, pretty much. And well, until we finished the third, we went back the next morning and I answered my room again. But he comes over at one point and had a brief exchange with all the guys in the team. He's kind of going around different places where guys were located, and I'm telling you, that guy was so calm and cool and collected in the middle of all that stuff that was going on. I thought he was about ready to fall asleep. You know, he was like, very sleepy. He was just so calm. And he just, he's like, hey, here's what we're doing with rotating people through security positions. Here's what we're doing with food. Here's what we're doing with water. What do you need? Blah, 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 blah. That was kind of it, It was,
Can you say who your team sergeant was, Jason?
say again?
Can you say who your team sergeant was on that mission?
No, I can't.
Okay.
I can't.
No, I don't know. Yeah, I wonder if he was someone who's public.
Well,
some of them are. Some of them.
The guy that I technically worked for, if I told you his name, you would recognize the name.
Mm-hmm.
Probably. The other guy that I was attached to, you wouldn't, and I'm not going to say.
Okay, right on.
Sure.
I don't think you would agree with that. I don't have contact with him, but I don't think he would agree.
Sure. So what happened that night for you, for your team, and for you personally? Like, was it just a very calm and peaceful evening?
Out there flapping.
No. It was, but it was sporadic. I mean, the part that the movie, so if you imagine 12 or 15 hours on the ground, right? You take everything that all the Rangers experience, you take everything that all of our guys experience, and all the guys in the Rangers and our guys that were in one location, all of those same people that were in the convoy going back and forth, and you could try and condense that into a 90-minute film.
Right.
It's in the film. It's nonstop. Literally nonstop for whatever it was, 90 minutes, 2 hours. I don't know. And that it wasn't like that for me where I sat. I remember little bird gun runs going a lot.
Right.
And those guys did. I can't even find a word that I know in the English language to describe to you how phenomenal what they did was. The word phenomenal is not sufficient. I literally, I don't know a word. It just, they actually brought in they brought us in a resupply to the place where we were at. I think that guy was about 15 or 18 feet off the deck when he cut that bundle loose, dropped on the ground, and I don't know to this day how he did that. I got in and hovered and dropped in and got back out. I have no idea how that happened. And it happened, before my very eyes, even though I couldn't see it because it was dark. I don't know how they did that. I really don't.
Yeah.
It was stunning. Again, I don't have a word.
Jason, you said that you were the nug, the new guy and whatnot, and I think it's an interesting concept, the idea of somebody feeling like a nug at that level in a special mission.
Yeah.
Right.
The amount of training, millions of dollars of training pumped into you at that point.
Right, and was this your first your first encounter since you had been in the Army?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And so you are the best of the best, the cream of the crop. How did that feel for you compared to how you had been in a mech infantry unit, compared to how you think it would have felt in a mech infantry unit? Do you think it would have been the same, that initial kind of, or do you feel? Yeah, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but please.
I don't know that I ever thought about it like that. That's a good question. I don't know that I have an answer for you. It was kind of all I I knew, so when, I don't know, all I knew was when we redeployed home and Jack, going back to our very beginning of our call here, I probably need to run about 10 or 12 minutes if that's
Sure,
okay.
sure.
All right. I really apologize.
We appreciate
we
your
could
time.
do 4 hours, seriously.
We could, and we'll do it again sometime if you're willing, Jason. But thank you.
So all I remember is going home over the next several months, and at some point it dawned on me that I didn't want everything I was to be October 3rd.
Mm.
And I at that point I didn't have the I didn't have any knowledge or education about what it was I was actually talking about. It was just I knew that I knew that I didn't want to be that guy who's like 65 years old, 70 years old, still at the telling everybody who doesn't want to listen anymore that the same story that it's like I understand the significance of it, and I'm thankful for all my mates that that were those who came home, and but it wasn't anything. And I think about it a lot, but it's just not one of those things I just wanted to hang my hat on and say, okay, I did this thing, and now I'm good. And I that's all I needed to do. It just wasn't. And some people may take issue with that.
No, not at all. I think that's kind of a healthy way to look at it. That you have there's much more to who you are as a person, your husband, and everything else that in life, and other great things you did in your career. And I've been told in the past that firefight was so traumatic for some people that Ranger Battalion and the unit both. They like in training afterwards, they retrained on that scenario over and over and over again, like refighting the Battle of Mogadishu. When it's like, hey guys, like the next firefight is not going to be like that.
Yeah.
There's something else coming after this.
Yeah.
Right. There were though. In fact, your point is valid, but there also were a number of tactics that we adapted, that we changed and adapted and got better at significantly after that happened. That still carries through to today. That was a tough lesson to learn, but it got learned, and we learned from it, and we continue. My understanding is that has not changed.
Oh yeah. No, when I got to Ranger Battalion, I mean, they were still talking about the lessons learned. Like, for example, take your nods on every mission. Why would you not take them? What's wrong with you? Things like that absolutely came through it.
Right.
Hey, so Jason, before
I'm moving a little bit here. I'm sorry.
yeah, not a problem. And for those who don't know, Jason has been a godsend, and he's joining us from a hotel and from a public area hotel.
He's been very patient with us.
Yeah. So we have a couple of questions that we need to get to. The people who have donated to ask questions, we really want to make sure we address them before we let you go. Thank you very much, Chris, or Ernest Chris. He said favorite unit time, primary build, secondary build, and sniper rifle build.
I guess he's talking about favorite weapon.
Yeah, I think your favorite. Did you have a preferred build out on your weapons, or was that something that that you guys had control over?
No, we didn't really. I mean, there was. That's actually a really good question. So the reality is that we have a trying to condense this answer down into not 10 minutes of me flapping my gums. The short answer is no. You could configure maybe for a couple of things, maybe like a sling or a flashlight or something. Basically, if you want to do something that is going to affect how the gun runs on the internal parts, you don't get to touch it. The most important thing is that you squeeze the trigger and it goes bang every time. Or you guys don't go into it's like, oh, I want my own trigger. and I got to have this certain kind of bolt and bolt carrier, and I got to have a special, hydraulic buffer. All that does not happen.
Right.
I want my own certain kind of compressor. It's like, no, we got all that stuff. It's best on the planet. So why would no? I understand the question, but that's not how. It works.
Yeah. Not at the operator level.
And were you sniper trained? Were you sniper trained?
No, I was not. No, I never was. No.
Okay. All right. Let's get Alejandro. Thank you very much, buddy. He said, I remember seeing a movie as a kid. Does the unit really have motorcycles that fire rockets and integral machine guns? I think that was Megaforce, wasn't it?
That was Chuck Norris, and no, we do not.
Okay.
Damn it.
So Megaforce was the one with the flying motorcycles. My mistake. Thank you very much, Andrew. Andrew said, on an unrelated note, how much would you guess, Jason, that it costs to buy a giraffe on the free market? And any guess will do. This is from an old show.
How much it costs to buy a what?
A giraffe. A giraffe on the free market. This is a deep cut. Say again?
I think that's one of those things that if you have to ask, you can't afford it, right?
I think you're right, Jason.
And I think that is it. We don't want to keep you too long because we know you're on a real time.
Yeah, Jason, I apologize for some of the audio issues we had today. Totally my fault.
No worries.
But I really appreciate you taking the time to spend, an hour and a half with us here tonight. And I hope we can do it again another time. Have things planned out a little bit better for all parties concerned. I always enjoy these conversations.
I really appreciate the time, fellas. I do, and I apologize that we can't do this on into the night, but I hope we can do it again.
Yeah, you got work to do, Jason. We hear you
so much.
Yeah, we would love to, and thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Likewise, fellas. I appreciate it, and thanks everybody out there who took the time to listen. It means a lot.
Absolutely. We'll do it again sometime. And Jason, if you need to sign out, feel free to take off now.
Yeah.
Okay. You guys take care.
Take care, brother. Have a nice night.
Take care.
Yeah, bye-bye.
So, hey, for everyone who joined us tonight, oh my God, look at that. That's crazy. Dave, take it.
Yeah, hey, thank you very much for everybody who joined us tonight. We have a couple of things real quick. We want to do a shout out. If you guys are political at all, and it doesn't matter if you're left or right because this is a nonpartisan issue, if you want to write or call your senator and have them kind of push HR, is that House Resolution?
Yeah.
HR 8276. And what this is for Alwyn Cash. For those of you who don't know, ALWYNCASHE. Alwyn passed in 2005. He won the Silver Star through his actions. I believe it was his Bradley caught on fire. Mm-hmm. He was the only person not incapacitated. And he pulled, I think, 9 soldiers out. And I think the last
Going into the flames, yeah.
And the last 2, he was on fire while he was doing it. He was put in for a Silver Star. Please read his story and read about the man that he was, because he was an amazing human being.
The story, I think, for so many people epitomizes the whole concept of selfless service, self-sacrifice. That he went into this burning vehicle over and over again to pull his soldiers out, and
under fire.
And he what was that quote before he died? He told someone that, I had to do it because my soul was saved, but I don't know about theirs.
Right.
Because he was a very strong Christian, apparently. And that story just resonated with soldiers, kind of at the boots on the ground level for so many years. But, Mr. Cash has not been awarded the Medal of Honor.
Correct. And if that is, from my understanding, it's not through any fault of his chain of command. It's that nobody really knew what happened because everybody involved was incapacitated at some point. His commander put him in for a Silver Star. Then when the men involved were actually kind of able to talk about it and whatnot, The commander, supported the idea of changing it to a Medal of Honor, but by that time, because of the way the military works, it was too late. It has to be done by a congressional approval.
And now we are 5 years past the event, so
Right.
it takes an act of Congress to
Okay.
get involved and get that process going again.
And it has passed the House.
Mm-hmm.
It is on the Senate floor. It was supposed to be voted on, I believe, today, and it's been pushed because of the Barrett confirmation
Okay.
vote. Or so this is what the Senate's saying. So, but please reach out to, and again, this is a nonpartisan issue. If you have an interest, please reach out to your representatives in the Senate and urge them to focus on this and to get it done. His family deserves it. He deserves it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a great cause, and I have nothing to do. I can't say who deserves a Medal of Honor, who doesn't, but reading his story, reading the citation on the Silver Star, I mean, she should certainly be considered. Yeah.
100%. 100%. So, also, please like this video if you like it. Like this video if you like us. Like this video if you liked Jason. Even if you hate us. And please subscribe. We're up, I think, over 1,000 subscribers in the last 28 days. Like, things are moving along for us. And we really appreciate every support.
Yeah, and there's also a link to our Patreon page down in the description where you get access to bonus segments with just about all of our guests. We had to let Jason go in this case, but just about damn near every guest, there's bonus segments we do with them. So
And there's also, is there a link to Teespring?
yes,
We have swag. There is a link to our Teespring. And that's going to grow over time as I figure out how to do the design work. Get yourself, and we don't even have this stuff. We ordered it, but it's brand new. So get yourself a Team House coffee mug or a hoodie or a t-shirt. There's might even be a cell phone case. I'm not sure.
yeah, and if you guys like that stuff, we'll get some more designs on there.
Yeah. And if you guys have any ideas or recommendations, we'll happily take those.
And on that note, too, I want to give a shout out to my friends. You take a look at this shirt here. Little Fallout guy, all done up as a operator. The website is wayfarerarms.com. It's a couple friends of mine who are in the military, and then they were volunteers at the Peshmerga, and they started their own.
You also have the hoodie.
Yeah, I'll show you the hoodie real quick, too. I got this stuff in the other day. See my new hoodie here. They're good friends of mine. They'll probably be guests on this podcast at some point. I just want to give them a shout out what they're doing, and there's some really funny t-shirts they have on there, so check them out. And next week we will BK is going to be on the show. Brian is our former PJ, a pararescue guy, a very opinionated young man. So I timed him just right before the election. So we are pretty apolitical on this show. We don't talk about presidential politics and all that kind of jazz. We kind of stay in our wheelhouse. But I have to warn everyone, next week, it's no holds barred. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be like, mud wrestling. I don't know what it's going to be bare knuckle brawl. I posted the picture to Brian already of the two UFC fighters where they're like, pre-game in it, and they're like nose to nose with each other, and they both have huge erections.
There's nothing wrong with
They're
that.
touching their tips.
Do they do mud wrestling anywhere other than military towns?
I don't know, brother.
Yeah, I don't know.
So yeah, next episode, it is a bit of a departure from our normal, segment. So,
but we will also talk about pararescue because we have not had a PJ on thus far, and their training is very arduous. Academically speaking. Physically, they're Air Force. So.
Oh yeah, no,
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
And they're very super highly trained medics. So no, I'm really happy to have Brian on. I've known him for a long time. Really good guy. As much of a troll as he is, We'll get into all of it next episode. And guys, again, I apologize that we had some audio issues with Jason today. He's a really good guy, really good cat, and we'll have him on again. And in the meantime, we'll try to get some of this stuff ironed out. So thank you everyone for spending some time with us tonight, and we'll see you next Friday. That's freaking me out too. All right, see you guys next time.
Buy our stuff.
All right, that's it. We're out.
That was great, man.